Blue Beetle issue 9, Josh
Mhm.
Tahil on the writing, Adrian Gutierrez on the art. Take it away, Matt.
Yeah, so I'm going to get this going up. But in the last issue, we had Victoria launched Pinnacle. So Victoria Cord, sister to Ted, um, launched the Pinnacle robot that's using the Green Beetle, Natita, or as they call it here. We learned that its reach name is, where'd it go? When it pops up, I'll point it out. But yeah, so it fires up and it had essentially cut that overthrow guy in half because it is protecting Victoria. Um, Jaime and Kaji go to try to they try to engage, and Victoria throws herself in front, right, and says like, "Hey, Blue Beetle's not a threat. We don't need to do this." And it powers down, and Jaime starts yelling at Victoria like, Why did you do all of this?" She goes, "Well, I only do what's necessary." And then as she goes to pick her glasses up out of the rubble from that Pinnacle has caused in this whole thing, she reveals to Jaime that his friend Brenda has been working for Victoria behind his back, which really throws him for a loop. And not only that, Victoria drops some Spanish on him. So stuff is starting to be revealed about Victoria that maybe she's. We already knew she wasn't trustworthy, but like to what level? Um, and uh, so Jaime leaves and is just like, your brother. I saw him. I went and found him in the time stream. You know, if he only knew everything that you were doing, you'd be trying to help me get him back. Um, and then yeah, so Jaime goes and confronts Brenda, and this is where the art really takes over because he flies out. He comes into the panel, right, and um, Paco, his friend, and Brenda are standing up against a chain link wall. And throughout the course of the sequence, it really does this whole separation between Brenda and Jaime. It makes it look like a cell at certain points. It really shows how separate they've been, despite the fact that she reveals that she did this to add like a stopgap for Jaime. Also, she needed a job. Um, and Jaime's even more taken back when he finds out that Paco knew about it the whole time, but was sworn to secrecy by Brenda. Been He was trying to protect them both the whole time, um, and Jaime's like, "Well, look what she did. She can't be trusted. She weaponized the Beetle in a scary way that we don't understand." And Brenda talks to that she knows, but all she want to do is help because she feels Jaime's too in over his head with all of this. Um, and Jaime lets her know that she's disappointed, but and tries to get her to quit, but she won't. She's like, she doesn't have anybody. She doesn't have Ted. She doesn't have people like you do. You're surrounded by people that care about you. Part of Victoria's problem is she has nobody, which I thought was really humanizing. After we see this, sinister side to Victoria Cord, kind of the fact that Brenda's sticking around because what if she has somebody? You know, what if I can be that person that Ted kind of was to her? And it goes back to Victoria's lab where she has this Pinnacle android, which now that I'm looking at it, kind of reminds me of a Sentinel, which I'm wondering if that's kind of the vibe that they're going for. But she realizes how big of a mistake this was, that she can't really control things as much as she thought she could. So she ends up demanding and ordering the Pinnacle to destroy itself, and it does. And Brenda comes in as there's a stasis field around Victoria to protect her from the explosion, um, and she sees the beetle Natita in pieces. So now we know that Victoria does have the means to destroy one of the scarabs if necessary. Um, and Brenda starts questioning Victoria why she did all of this type of stuff. And she had said that when her dad had turned over Cord Industries to her instead of Ted, it was, he made it known to her that she could no longer just be confident being the smartest woman on earth, but she had to be also the most powerful. And it starts to feel kind of like Lex Luthor villain kind of stuff. And Victoria says that she realized she didn't care and that she'd rather be seen as a villain than a victim. And Brenda kind of agrees with her. So Victoria dismisses Brenda, says that's enough, we'll get back at this tomorrow. And Brenda looks over and reaches for the Green Beetle. As Victoria leaves, Brenda takes one of her flying cars out, and because she took the Beetle, it launches some of these drones from Cord Industries called Nightingales that go to hunt her down to get the Green Beetle back, which of course gets Jaime involved, and he ends up bringing down the car, but then Victoria calls down her drones because as she goes into the control room where the drones are, Ted Kord's there and is just basically like, look, I've been in the shadows. I've been watching from afar. I don't like who you've become. So I don't know if this is actually Ted or just some, other thing that's coming, for Victoria to trick her. But she's like, well, why can't you see what I'm doing? And he's like, well, no, I can, but we have a real crisis on our hands. You've really made a big mess. And in the crash, because of her drones, the Green Beetle gets away and reforms as Pinnacle, but now it's self-sustaining, so it's running its own operating, which is going to eliminate all threats to Cord Industries, including the Horizon. And so it starts heading for the part of town where the Horizon have held up. And in case you don't remember, the Horizon are the other Reach, right? They're the ones that are holed up in Palmyra City, and they kind of have their own little section of town. So it's going there to take them out because it sees them as the biggest threat. So yeah, very, very good issue. Again, humanizing Victoria Kord is something I didn't think, because from the beginning she's been seen as the villain, but she's had her moments back and forth. But pointing out that she doesn't have anybody and that Brenda's going to stay there, because maybe she just needs to be heard. I like that part. And then Jaime's whole in over his head thing that's kind of, since Blue Beetle took off, as far back as I can remember, has been his entire thing. So here, her pointing that out to Jaime, that he doesn't have as quite at the control that he thinks he does, I like that as well. And the art looks great. There's no Starfire in this issue, but everything else looks great. Especially the coloring here. So like when we see Pinnacle, it's kind of pinkish purple, which contrasts with a lot of the other stuff going on in the city. So when we see that it's ran by this Green Beetle, and it starts to reform, it adds a bit of, I guess you'd say, contrast, because when it comes back, it's not as pink and as purple. So it kind of blends into the city more. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm sad the book's ending, but if we can finish up strong, I think that's a good sign for Trujillo as a writer. But yeah, so I will give this an 8.